it's so incredible to get there at the last chapter, the last sentence. What my grandpa taught me, and my dad, and my older brother, and my cousins, you know, we all find the positive perspective. 9 p.m. I got a call and had to go out and help my dad, and it was pouring rain, and, you know, just taking care of people.
I drove home to Maine for my grandmother and my grandfather. You know, they were able to pass in their own bed. Got a room full of loved ones watching your every move.
People losing people, you know.
The Undertaker, you know, you got the gold.
So on these 10 songs about 10 individual experiences, it's about helping people, you know, through the worst days of their lives. Nothing comes close at all to the closeness that I've had with people, and it was found in silence.
Welcome to WeedBuds Radio. I'm your host, Rye, in the studio with Matt Perry as always. Thanks, Matt.
Check 1, 2. Ooh, my monitors are hot over here. Okay. I hope you're enjoying the FX sounds back there, Rye.
I'm sorry, I was in a Zen garden.
Exactly where I want you to exist is in this beautiful Zen garden back here that we've created. It's a little dark episode today.
It is. This is a really unique episode. It's definitely something that I wouldn't normally release. It's very personal to me, but at the same time, it's very personal to our guest. And I am so honored that Jesse Littleton, he's been on the show before. He is the director of marketing for Ancient Roots in Ohio, but he has this other life that people don't necessarily know about. Maybe 2 extra lives. He's a rock star, right. Literally. In every sense of the term, he is a rock star. But he's also the Undertaker's kid. And that is a really unique aspect of his life that he gets to share with us today. Or I should say, we get to be a part of.
Right.
And so he joins us, and you'll hear more about the influence that Jesse has played in my life and why this is so special to me. So I really hope that everybody enjoys this and really follows Jesse Littleton and the album release, The Undertaker's Kid.
Thank you, Ryan. That was a great introduction. Thank you.
Absolutely. You know, just taking it one day at a time, like we all do. I'm really excited to catch up with you because you've got a lot that's shaking and baking.
I do, man. And I got to tell you, too, my crew, those guys love meeting you out there at BizCon and checking you out at there. So it's kind of cool to expand the network. But I just want to let you know they really, really enjoyed meeting you and some of the WeedBuds crew.
I appreciate that. I mean, what an amazing team, because you, from the get-go, have told me about all of your team members and a little bit about their backgrounds and how special it is that you guys kind of found each other to create this business. When we were at MJ BizCon, speaking to the 3 of them, like it's one thing, you know, when your director of marketing says, oh, we've got the best team and we love each other and it's a family. But when you have 3 other members that are like, this is the best. Like, we love each other, we support each other, we empower each other. The culture of Ancient Roots is something that's not only special, but something you all must be super proud of.
Yeah, we are, man. And I appreciate you saying that. That's huge. And it's something we work at. You know what I mean? Just like anything, it's turning kind of all these friends that are now becoming family, but business associates and colleagues. And it's just becoming our life. You know, you end up, if you're in this industry, and a lot of people can relate, you spend about 80% of your time with the people you're working with. I mean, it's just that feverish of a workload, I think, for anybody, whether you're in cultivation, whether you're in processing, and obviously the dispensary life. So,
right.
No, man, I appreciate it. Yeah, we're really pumped and excited with everything that's going on with Ancient Roots. But yeah, that's kind of one of the things that's shaking and baking, and got some music stuff coming up. So yeah, there's a lot going on.
So tell us about some of the music stuff, because we've learned about Ancient Roots a few times now, and obviously we follow very closely. But I think something that our audience would be very intrigued in is your story of a passion project that you've been working on for a while now, and it's time. It's go time.
Yeah, it is, man. And what's funny, I think this may be probably the first time I'm being interviewed about it. You know, I mean, truly, I mean, we kind of did some stuff for a documentary, but yeah. But no, we're working on a record that I recorded a few months ago with a producer named Dave Bassett, who did my first record, which we might have mentioned in the last interview, Full Moon Cigarette. But it's an all-piano record. I grew up in the funeral business. Dave and I have been talking about making this record since we've met, you know, which is almost, oh my gosh, over 15 years ago about. And so the idea was to make this record sort of based on these 10 songs about 10 individual experiences that I've had and what it's like to grow up in the funeral business. So each song, you know, I'd spent a year and a half just writing on that topic and marinating, you know, and that idea, and really going through how it's affected me, to find that it's affected me so much that, you know, I needed to make a whole record about it. But that's getting ready to drop, and we couldn't be more excited. And it's going to get to happen kind of on a bigger level, you know, with Hans Zimmer and this guy Russell Emanuel that work with Dave Bassett and Steve Lindsay at Kingmaker Records. Hans Zimmer and Russell's thing's called Extreme Music, and they're out of Cali, and they're just the ones putting stuff in HBO and movies here and this and that. So they're getting ready to go do their thing, and yeah, right. I couldn't be more pumped, obviously.
Well, so I have to tell you, and I know you and I have the privilege of speaking fairly regularly, and in this album, it hit me obviously in a very special and kind of in your face way. If you remember, I came to visit you right after you started recording, and we were talking, and you played a mini documentary of just the process and the album and some of your partners. And it happened to come in a very pivotal time of my life, having just lost my mom's mother and dealing with end-of-life care for my dad's father. And while I was in Ohio, I was actually supposed to leave that Sunday for a cruise, and hadn't taken a lot of time off in the year or two prior. And it was something that I was really looking forward to with some of my friends. And you and I hung out on a Friday, and you played that for me, and you played some of the album, and I knew immediately. You knew that I knew immediately. And, you know, watching it hit me, and it made me realize that there are so many more important things than a cruise. And I left your place, and it was about an hour 20 or so back to my residence in Ohio. And I packed up in about a half hour, and instead of driving to the airport, I drove home to Maine. And, you know, about 16 and a half hours later, I was able to be home and spend what was going to be the last few days of his life with him and the other members of my family. And, you know, after you and I talked, I talked to my parents and my sister, and it seemed, for all intents and purposes, that things could take a while to progress. And it's everybody was encouraging me to go on this trip and to go on this cruise. But right. Your album, and I know that you don't personally take credit for it, but the influence of an album and a story and a message like this, already, you know, it hasn't even launched yet, and it has made such an impact on my life that I can't stop talking about it. And so I really appreciate, seriously, I really appreciate you kind of breaking this news, if you will, with us on WeedBuds Radio.
Yeah, sure.
But sharing kind of your journey with me, and kind of being able to share my cannapreneur journey with you has been really special. Because if you remember, you were my third episode ever in podcast recording.
Yes, top 3.
That's right. So tell us a little. That you got the bronze. Well, I think you got the gold because this is now our third episode together.
Oh, see, there we go. There it is.
Now, there's something really special about where you recorded this album.
Yeah, so a lot of it, I obviously wrote it actually in the home that I grew up in, which is our creative studio in Sabina, Ohio. And I always say that that's in the Bermuda Triangle of Columbus, Dayton, and Cincy. But that's where the funeral home I grew up in is, across the street. And so, yeah, a lot of the writing started there. And then we ended up recording at Sunset Sound out in Los Angeles. I was lucky enough to do my first record there with Dave Bassett and a couple guys from Beck's band. And that was kind of our big release. And then all these years later to be back there and to be doing this again with Dave. We had Davey Farragher, who's Elvis Costello's bass player, Bernie Dressel, who's Brian Setser's drummer. I mean, and they play with everybody else and are on all these other records. And it was just this all-star cast of people. And so what I did is prepare for about a year and a half, writing, wrote 23 songs, got them down to 10, took them to L.A., knocked the whole record out in about 2 days. Yeah, we just...
How is that possible?
But that's what
2 days?
Well, it's kind of like if you're touring and you who love like comedians and people, they spend time... like they record their specials at the end of their tour,
Sure.
and that kind of thing. So I just prepared for it as if I was, working and knowing that I'm going to have to go in and perform these songs damn near perfect,
So you put a lot of work in. That year and a half was that was a true year and a half of really finalizing this art.
Yeah, and even the performance and how fast a song should be. I mean, there's just so many things that go into it, especially when you're doing it sort of all at once like that, and you got other people that you're just going to collide. And, the days that we collided were those 2 days, and that's how the record was made. And it's incredible what came out. But it's the same room where they did Prince's Purple Rain, Guns N' Roses, The Doors, Zeppelin. A lot of the other people have recorded at the studio. So it's just got this thing, and it's kind of my home studio, is where I did my last big one. And honestly, I'd probably go out there and do it again. There's just something about it, it's really nice. But yeah, so we've got an all-star cast, all-star studio experience, and man, I can't be excited. Couldn't be more excited, man.
If you don't mind kind of telling us a little bit about where the inspiration for these songs came from, because the title of the album is The Undertaker's Kid.
Correct, yes.
So tell us a little bit what it's like. I mean, truly growing up as The Undertaker's Kid.
Man, it's a question that when I was doing my radio stuff back in the day, they were really interested in knowing that, 6 Feet Under had come out, and it sort of allowed people to have that conversation and, that time. But man, it's when you ask me, it's very enlightening, is one of the biggest things that come to mind, because it's so fragile, and it's something I still do in my life. Just a few days ago, I was doing that, picking up bodies and people's loved ones. And, but man, I tell you, it's just made me realize how fragile it all is. And, it's made me drink up every moment. I've experienced some health issues and kind of brushed up against it a couple times myself, but it's a part of what we are. And I think we spend a lot of time forgetting that part's coming. And I think it is important to talk about it, because I've seen what it's done in my life, and it's really made me and my family and brother and sisters. It's just, we're very, we live our lives, we know that this is quick, and yeah, I'm sure a little PTSD might come with it. It's not every day that you pick up, bodies, and it's this adrenaline-filled experience. But man, it's kind of a code we've always lived by. Our family's been in the funeral business since 1905, and it's just about helping people, through the worst days of their lives. So that can't not affect you.
I was just going to say, does it make you jaded in any way? How does it impact you and your psyche?
I think, the super honest answer is that you end up being a little bit tapped for the people closest to you sometimes, because you're giving so much to others, on the daily, really. So it's hard. It's hard when you get home to sort of deploy that same patience and positivity and light, when you get home after, having a few week run of just people losing people, because that's kind of how it is. There'll be a lot of people all at once, or, not, and then there might be a week or something where you get a little bit more of a break, but it's just ongoing, man. So yeah, it's definitely, it can wear you out, but it can lift you up. So it's just like anything, you can find the positive perspective in it or the negative, but it being a part of your life daily and our livelihood and what we've been doing for over 100 years, the best word is a code. It's because it happens any day, anytime. The other night at 9 p.m. I got a call and had to go out and help my dad, and it was pouring rain, and just taking care of people. So
I can't even imagine
what it's like.
And with grace, right? I mean, you have to be so empathetic in that moment. I'm thinking, to, the two experiences that I had last year, my first real experience in real loss. I was very young and that was hard, but, dealing with, two such important people of my life in 1 year, I can think of those moments, those last moments in their own house. And I was so lucky, and they were so lucky, and the families were lucky that, this for my grandmother and my grandfather, they were able to pass in their own beds. And that was so special. And I remember the Undertaker, taking such amazing care and respect and brought so much dignity to a process that was, I can't even imagine the pressure when, you've got a room full of loved ones watching your every move. Does that ever get to you at all?
Yeah, that's the moment. That's the moment that I think that you walk into because you actually feel it. And because you're coming from outside, wherever you are, whether it's the hospital, a nursing home, or someone's home, or a scene of an accident. There's a lot of different things, but you absolutely feel it and it affects you. But I think that that's the moment where, you're at your best. They need someone to be at their best at that time. Right. The word, the Undertaker, it's just an interesting thing. It's like who long time ago, it was like, who's going to take care of that? It's a very fragile process, having a body, and, but man, yeah, it's the most intense thing, and it happens different every time. But in a lot of times, it's the last time that those people will be in that house. So I think about that, and to me, I just think about the honor that it is to be there at the end of their story. I think we all have a narrative. I have one. I can't tell you who's going to be there at the end by me or around me, if anyone, or where I'll be in the world, when that happens. But it's so incredible to get there at the last chapter, the last sentence, and to be there, just make sure that part is just really the way it should be for people, is what my grandpa taught me, and my dad, and my older brother, and my cousins. We've all, we're all a part of it, man. It's weird. And I haven't given it this much thought, until I really took on this record. So it's kind of interesting to go back through it all,
It had to have been a journey for you. Did you know that this was the album that you wanted to produce?
Yeah, I think so. When I started it, there were some different times where I had actually wrote on a couple pages all the people's loved ones that I picked up that I could remember, or bodies that I had picked up. And that was a long list, we're talking a couple pages of just small writing and a long list of that I could remember. And so that was kind of a way to sort of tap into those memories, because a lot of the times you do set them aside. You put them somewhere. I'm not sure where they go, but I definitely don't forget any of them most of the time, just because they're all so special. But yeah, man, there wasn't any certain approach except try to, if I was to tell someone about this, like in this setting, instead of me rambling and doing what I do, tell it best through the album. The album says it all. So that was my goal, is to get past the talky talk, get past the first impressions of it, and really feel how I felt about it and how it's affected me, and how I've seen it affect people that I love, and just how it affects me in my marriage and my work life. In my friendships. It's all the way through. So it was just this big undertaking, of songwriting. Really,
Right.
it was a challenge. You know, it was like, wow, how do we put all that into 10 songs? But it was 23, so there was a lot of other conversations. We got it down to 10, but I think that they're the conversations that I wanted people to hear from me, you know, and that really give my best impression of how it's affected me, you know. And that's my favorite thing to do is, you know, if I like any last record, I could die after that. It's like, oh, I got that out of me. This one being conceptual was weird, man. It was like I haven't done something so specific, but that was the challenge, is to get specific. And it took me on a ride, and I think I've uncovered a lot of things within myself, but I've also uncovered a narrative that I'm seeing that's affecting other people, like you're mentioning, you know, and you losing your family, you know, members and going through that. It's, you know, we all do that. And I think what this record does is just sort of remind us. And I guess if it does anything, I hope it does that, maybe, you know, just remind everyone just how radical and beautiful and hardcore this all is, man. It's a weird space. It's a tragic space, but it can also be like triumphant and glory.
Right.
It's got it all, man. It's got it all. That's all I've learned.
It's such a range of emotion. When I listen to this album, you know, I feel connected, one, to you, but I also feel connected to the individuals in the story. It's something that in some capacity, when I think about it, and I think about these stories, they're in your head. They're in your head every day. You know, does an album like this, is it almost therapeutic?
Yeah, I think so. It is every time. I mean, if you approach, you know, you can write songs here and there, but like when you're really attacking a project, you know, it's like building a house. You know, you got to be prepared. And I knew what it was going to take. It wasn't like I was going to write this in a week, right. You know, so I didn't put any timeline on it. But yeah, man, it'll take a lot out of you.
I see you, and I mean, you have such a big personality, but you're also so humble and so empathetic that I can only imagine, you know, what's going through your head. And, you know, to me anyway, you know, to watch you, you know, to really watch the way in the documentary you will be releasing when the album releases, you can see passionate. And I feel this presence coming out of you, and, you know, watching it, I'm like, man, you know, he is leaving it all out there for the audience. And it's just, it has to be something that's an emotional roller coaster.
I mean, it's sobering. You know, I mean, that's a good word for it. Like when you brush up against, you know, whether it's picking up a body or you lose somebody in your family, it's how it is. And it was very therapeutic, but it was also hard. But man, yeah, I think it just, gosh, I don't know. I just need it every day. You know, I need the reminder. And I think they're the most real experiences I've ever had. And it's like you and I've had some great conversations, you know, even outside of this and just with people deep in my life, but nothing comes close at all to the closeness that I've had with people. And it was found in silence, and it was found in screaming and horror and tears, or, you know, respect and humor and laughter. But it was about, yeah, just those little moments, like, and I get to experience those. You know, I did just a couple of nights ago, and my dad and you know, everybody that's more involved even than I am. It's just, you can't even imagine, you know. But they do it great. So.
You mentioned your dad, and there's something that, again, I think this made me cry initially, was watching, you know, on Facebook some videos of you and your dad playing together, but then realizing that you had a song that he played the piano on. How special to have him and be able to do that.
Yeah, one of the cool things is we set up a rig in the second floor of the funeral home where we got this big old Hammond B3 organ. And then I brought all the tracks, you know, from LA back, and then set it up, and Dad could rip on that Hammond B3, and he ended up playing on it, man. And it's just, I mean, to have things like that, and to have my dad's name along with mine, obviously, but on a record of just these killers, because a lot of my dad's journey, my dad was a phenomenal piano player, plays the drums great, you know, but even to this day just rips on piano and writes his own stuff, you know. Not so many songs so much, but he can sing a little bit, and then but just these amazing piano compositions that are just intense. and totally where my style comes from. When people wonder, like, oh, it's my dad, it's like heavy left hand, wide fingering, like it's my dad through and through, man. So to have him on there, it's just incredible, especially because, his life was sacrificing not only for us and our family, but the community, but his dreams. I'm sure some rock and roll that could have definitely been there with his skill set, and him and my mom both, but they chose this path. So just for all those reasons, man, it's just so great. And we just love music, grew up with it. And
we've talked about it before, but I don't know that we have on WeedBuds Radio. The whole family is really involved with this album and generationally.
But Gran Bel Fisher, I had a fifth generation ago grandfather named Gran Bel Fisher Littleton, that started off this. And then when I was a kid, my great Aunt Betty, we were down in Florida, who'd only met maybe once or twice. But the first time, she said, the only one in our family with a cowlick like that, and a cowlick, for people listening, is kind of like Dennis the Menace. You got the big blonde swoop there in the front of your head. Is your great-great-great-great-grandfather, and I thought she said Gran Bel Fisher, 3 words, Gran, 1 word, Bel, 1 word, Fisher, Fisher. Well, it ended up being Gran Bel Fisher Littleton, like Granville, 1 word, Fisher. Years later, after I already released a major label release and, didn't look too far back into it, just thought that's what it was. And then, but no, so there's a fun synergy. And then the music became the music, and that's what I wanted all along. I'm Jesse Littleton, but I wanted to be able to go do that and play that part and take on really that energy that it takes to do what that is. And it's Gran Bel Fisher. So
I love the whole concept of Gran Bel Fisher and what it meant to you, and then to kind of have that fun turn of events. But I mean, it goes to show that a kid's mind is brilliant, right? I mean, what you've been able to put together since being a child, all of this, everything's just a collection of our experiences, and you and I talk about that all the time. But to really see how just your entire family is supportive, and it's special because my cousin and I were speaking about some of the projects that we work on, and what would those projects mean if our parents didn't support us, and not only do your parents support you, but it's also kind of a part of them, and I think that's really special.
It is, man, and it was a big responsibility, and that's why I'm 38 now. I'm not 26, releasing Full Moon Cigarette, which was one of my first big ones, and I've had a couple records in between. This is just, I had to come at it confident. I had to come at it world class, and because that's the way that my parents did it. This wasn't something that was just going to happen in the flash of a pan. So, I came forward with a lot of respect and honor, which was important to me, because I just didn't want it to be, it's the dead person record, or it's this. No, this has to be as done as well as we do it every day, with people in our community, and just and I think we did the same thing with this record, and I think it's going to translate, man. Or I hope it does. I hope it at least reaches a few people. So
I know people are going to be sharing this as much as they can when it's released. Speaking of which, do you have an estimated release date?
Yeah, I think it's going to be sometime here in February. So it could be the end of the month, and I would say early March. But yeah, it's definitely happening in a few weeks, which is just bonkers.
That's incredible. And where will we be able to find it?
You can definitely find it. It should be streaming on all platforms. I'm going to find out a little bit more. These guys have a little more international reach too, but I would imagine on the iTunes, Spotify's of the world, and Amazon, all of it. So.
Awesome. So we'll definitely add a link to your Instagram page, and then people can follow you. And when that gets released, be sure to check it out and to share it with everybody you know. This is an album, and Dave says it best in the documentary. This is an album that needs to be heard, and it is performed by an individual that absolutely needs to be heard again. Really, a large number of us, we may have heard you before and not even know it.
Sure. And I just think it's time. There's times when I'm ready to, I get confident enough to say, all right, I got something to tell you, and I feel like that's now in my seasoning, as a musician. It's just, I'm feeling good, man. Life's great.
I love it. even going through, thinking about this and, thinking about that day in particular. I mean, that Friday, man, I'll tell you, I'll never forget it.
Well, that's good, man. Days can be like that. It's, and then I think every moment, is an opportunity to just, for anybody, you just got to choose love and you got to choose patience and just know that every time somebody walks out the door, tell them you love them. Definitely it's a jungle out there, man. So act accordingly,
I think we could all use a little bit more empathy at the end of the day. I think we'd all be a little better off.
Oh, certainly. Yeah, we get so wrapped up. It's sort of like in those moments where there's like, a car is on top of somebody. We got to help the person and lift it off. You see these heroic things come out of people, but we have to put on that sort of cape each time that we go out to sort of do that with people and for people. And you feel it all the time, and you feel that camaraderie and that connection to realize, wow, rich or poor, no matter what way you lived your life, it's all, there is that moment, where we all go down, we crumble, we vanish, we move on, we die. And to see it and live it and be around it makes me feel more alive than ever. So.
That's so special. Thank you so much for, not just sharing the album and, some of the, kind of pre-release information, but to kind of give us a deep dive into the man behind it. Because when people listen to the music and then they're able to have that kind of personal connection with you, it just makes everything hit the heart. So I really encourage everybody to go follow Jesse and Gran Bel Fisher. And when this album is released, you're going to want to share it with everybody you know. And when you're done listening to it, you're going to want to hug and just love on everybody in your life. And, it's something that, I hope everybody really listens to it and carves out the time to just let it fall on their ears, because I think the album itself is a little eye-opening. I know that I talk about it a lot. I was selling you to the gentleman working on my vehicle a couple weeks ago. It was the CD was in the car, and driven it in and dropped it off, and I was waiting in the waiting room at the dealership. When I went to go pick up my car, I went out and the key was in the cup holder, and the mechanic was there. He said, "Hey, when I pulled your car in, I heard the album that was playing in your vehicle. And so I turned it up and I listened to it while I worked on your car." He said, "Man, this is the first time I've ever worked on a car." And it just started crying. He's like, that really hit me. And so I told him where he could find you, where he could connect with you, and know that album was coming. It was an incredible experience. And so I wanted to share that with you because I think that you're probably going to hear a lot of stories similar to that, of just the unassuming bystander that, this album, falls on their ears, and you can't help but get hooked.
Well, I appreciate it, man. That means everything, especially to a songwriter, and when you kind of put it all into it. And yeah, man, I'm excited to see how people feel about it and how I feel about it. So
for a type A person like me, it's hard to feel like there's, higher powers that are influencing decision making in any way. But here I am in Ohio all alone, and it hits me. My life is impacted through cannabis, and, my life changes for all intents and purposes. And I kind of go on this journey exploring cannabis, which when I first started, I was very nervous, and decided to put it together in this podcast format, which, you've seen kind of all three, versions of the podcast leading up to WeedBuds Radio, where we are today. Yeah. I go and I do my first setup. I was so nervous, and going in and meeting with Buckeye Botanicals, I remember. And yep. Everybody there told me, "Oh man, you have to meet Jesse. Your personalities mesh. He's somebody that you have to know." And I show up, and you were, so gracious to let me in. I at that point in time, I was just launching, didn't have a real big following, and you're you're working on your album and you're helping start up this cannabis cultivation. You're busy, and you let me in. I'll never forget that first day of showing up and immediately going in for the hug. And, we played around with the audio. You helped me work out some kinks. But then our friendship kind of, I think that's when we came up with like the hashtag Budz for life.
Oh yeah, I love it, man. No, it was awesome to meet you. It was so funny. I remember Buckeye Botanicals, Brad being like, "Oh, you got to meet this guy, Rye," too. And it was like, "Oh, cool." I'm glad to connect with you, man. And I appreciate, obviously, you taking the time to listen to the tunes and taking the time to talk to me today, man.
I'm feeling an interesting duality about this episode because I'm excited for Jesse's album, and I'm also just generally sad about, death.
It's hard. It's a really hard topic to talk about and to discuss. And that is something that has always attracted me to Jesse. From the first day that I met him, everything is raw.
Right.
It's authentic. And as we discussed in his and my conversation, his influence has impacted my life dramatically.
Right.
If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have been in some of the situations that I was in last year. And I wouldn't have been there for some really important moments because I might have been distracted by something else. But he just has this way of captivating you and bringing you back to the moment that you're in. And that is something that I will always be tremendously grateful to Jesse for, and why I think everybody needs to pay attention and look out for this album, because it is something that you've heard a sneak peek, Matt.
Oh, the whole thing is gold. Everything that I've heard is gold.
And it's so heavy and authentic and raw, you can't help but to feel something from these stories, whether it's Jesse's passion or you're connected to the individual that the story might be about. It is super powerful. And so we will be on the lookout, and we will be sure to share as soon as his album is released.
Definitely.
You'll be able to find it on Spotify in the usual directories, I'm sure. But he has some real power, real inspiring individuals that are working with him on this album, and I'm so excited for where we're going to find it, because you are more of a music individual than myself, and you recognize some of the partners that he's working with to put the Undertaker's Kid together.
Totally. That's why the extended intro is sort of an homage to just musicians in general. And in a way, Jesse is representing, he's paying homage to Undertakers in general. So I think that's a beautiful thing.
And to the individuals that they touch. And just his words are so powerful, the connection between human beings. And I really hope that all of you appreciated the episode today. Please be sure to like, share, retweet, and be sure to follow Jesse Littleton, and we'll have links to all of his social media channels and website. Until next time, puff.
Puff.
Peace.